All right. Welcome everyone to an IP Day, Tech Tuesday, sponsored by obviously the Institute of Professional Development for Adult Educators, IP Day, and the Florida Department of Education. Um, Thanks for having me, and thanks for everyone being here. Today's webinar, our Tech Tuesday, is going to focus on digital literacy kind of broadly, and then more narrowly through the subject of spreadsheets, Excel spreadsheets, and creating timelines through Excel related to teaching U.S. history at the same time that we're teaching some digital literacy. So I hope that sounds exciting to you. Thanks for joining us and tuning in, and let's get right to it. So my name's Harold Gertner, and I'm a trainer for IP Day. And again, I'd like to thank you for having me. I've been involved in adult education since 2013. And like many people in adult education, I have a wide and varied educational background that I think's helped me connect with our students. And yeah, has brought me a few extra skills to bring to the table and share with you. Anyhow, not much else to say there other than here's my email if you'd like to get in touch with me at hgertner@floridaipday.org. And we'll display this again at the end of the webinar today if you decide by then you need to write it down or something. So yeah, let's move right along. A few kind of housekeeping technical matters before we get into the real subject matter of today. Today you're in a listen only mode. All your mics are muted, and that's purposeful because there's a large number of people in the room, and there can be feedback issues and such when mics become unmuted, or and some discussion issues when too many people try to talk at once. So we'd like to encourage you to participate. However, using the question and answer option, the Q&A option, or the chat bar. And there'll actually be a few times throughout the session today that I'll ask you to participate in the chat bar. And a few times where I'll just have some yes or no questions, and you can just yes or no or Y or N. And some other times when I'll ask for a little more input and feedback. And the more involved folks are, the more fun it becomes. So please feel free to use that Q&A and chat option as we get going. Now, as you heard when we got started, the session is being recorded, and it will be available in about 48 hours or so via the IP Day website, and you can find it, rewatch it, share it with your colleagues that weren't able to join you here today, and all those types of things. All right, so what are we really getting into? As I mentioned, we're talking about digital literacy, and it's a key part of adult education and a key part of our grants and a key part of navigating the world that we live in. And then we're going to look specifically at a history, an issue that I've seen come up many times in instruction in related to U.S. history in a social studies setting or a reading class where you're working on social studies material as well. And that comes down with the confusion of dates and the timeline of events. And we'll talk a little bit about that. And then we'll talk about how we can teach both of these skills at once by creating historical timelines in Excel. And if that sounds a little overwhelming to you at this point, hopefully by the time we get there, or at least by the end of the day today, you'll feel a little more excited and a little less anxious about teaching multiple things at once like that and teaching some digital literacy along with some historical knowledge. We'll give you some lesson plans. There'll be a workbook available to you related to this webinar, and there'll be some lesson plans in there, and we'll also talk about some lesson ideas together, and I'll try and get your feedback to help come up with some additional lesson plan ideas that maybe I haven't thought of and haven't shared, or that and we want to share across the room. So I'm just prepping you there. That's one of those chat bar items I might ask for a little more involvement on. And then we'll explore kind of early in the session, but also towards the end, if we have more time, a little more deeply, some free digital literacy resources out there to help make some of this instruction very easy and less of a burden to you. Okay, so the goal is really that you'll kind of understand and agree with the idea that teaching digital literacy and academics in tandem, or as I like to think of it, as the digital literacy embedded into your traditional academic class, is a powerful tool, a powerful way to approach this, and a great use of your time and energy. And hopefully, you'll also be able to create a timeline in Excel and see how easily that can be done. And then, like I said, we'll leave with some lesson plans to really put this directly into practice, and hopefully many more ideas to twist and turn it to meet your exact specific needs. All right. So with that, we should probably get to it. So let's talk about those spreadsheets first, a little digital literacy and a little bit about Excel and spreadsheet use. So depending on what you do in adult education exactly, you may teach in a classroom and not have to deal with too much data or spreadsheets, or you may be in a combination classroom administrative role where there's lots of spreadsheet work and you feel like a seasoned vet when it comes to things like Excel. But either way, just broadly speaking, I'm sure you realize that digital literacy is essential for your life, your work, your school. Everything you do these days is on the computer. You pay bills with your phone or on a tablet. Much of your students' coursework will be housed on the computer and on the internet, maybe through a learning management system like Canvas. Often work schedules are set that way. Communications are done through email or specific chat messaging systems, all that sort of thing. And it's important for our students to be comfortable with all these different types of things. Many students are very comfortable with their phone and can do quite a lot on their phone. But that's not really digital literacy and in terms of a complete picture. We need students to be able to use the computer a little bit more and use some of the more common uh, computer programs a little bit, right? Beyond just that broad idea that digital literacy is important and something that we should be teaching our students, or we're failing them, not really preparing them for the future if we're avoiding it. It is a core component of our grants. Um, it, a certain level of digital literacy has been mixed in there for a long time. Some programs have focused solely on the academic side of things with little time or energy paid to that. And but I think there's been a renewed effort in the way the grants are written, and the whole push beyond earlier grants for integrated education and training projects, into where that's a part of every grant, to have digital literacy be a bigger part of things. And so one great way to focus on that is embedded into the traditional classroom instead of trying to find new or different time to have your computer classes. You can have computer lessons or digital literacy lessons folded in with your academic lessons. And maybe many of you are already doing this, but hopefully we'll encourage you today with a little deeper next step of what that could look like. So one great place to find some resources to help you with teaching digital literacy is through the Goodwill Community Foundation. It's a free resource, and it's part of Goodwill's general efforts. And yeah, I'd just like to take a quick minute here to show you a little bit about what it has to offer. And maybe if you're already feeling, as some of us might, hey, I know how to use Excel, but I don't know that I can teach someone how to create a timeline in Excel. That sounds a little next level. Or I don't even know if I can teach someone how to do the things I know how to do. I don't know every way to average a column. I know one way to average a column of numbers, or I know one way I filter for stuff, but I don't know if I can really teach that to someone else. Or, well, this will give you the confidence to take what you know or don't know. Uh, and I'll get to what I mean by that in just a minute, and share it with your students. So we're going to go to the Goodwill Community Foundation's homepage, or learnfree.org. Learnfree.org is a great way to look for it. And it comes, even if you search learnfree.org and click on that, it comes to this weird address that's the edu.gcfglobal, but you don't have to type that exact thing in. Don't worry. Um, so you come to this main page. If you, I'm going to scroll down a little bit here, and you get a few major topic areas to choose from. And if we have time later, I'm going to dive a little bit deeper and show you all the topics briefly, just to give you a wealth of the things you can do with this. But first, we're going to go into technology. Okay, and then under technology, we're just going to start with the first area here under Office, and we're going to go to Excel because we're talking about spreadsheets. But notice there's some lessons on Word and PowerPoint, and if I scroll down a little bit, you can see a little bit of some of the other type of content they have on here. Okay, so we're going to go into the Excel, and then what it brings up is a series of lessons. Okay, in which with each of these lessons, there's a short video, a written transcript of the video, and very nice, kind of almost textbook-like lesson formatting, not just a written transcript. It's very easy to read, teachable format with screenshots and such. And for most of the activities, not every single one, but 85% or 90% of them maybe, there is a lesson, a challenge activity at the end after your lesson, rather, and a downloadable document that you manipulate to do your challenge and to practice. So you don't have to create something new from scratch every time you want to teach students some lesson. So let's talk about something like we just skipped over. I scrolled past the introduction, getting started with Excel. It's a quick overview of all the tools, kind of overwhelming almost for some students at first, but you can see everything, well, not everything, but the majority of things Excel could do. Little overview of what OneDrive is and understanding the cloud and how you can save things into your OneDrive. Some basics about opening and saving and sharing your workbooks in Excel. Okay, but let's get to a little more to show you some of the better ways in which these work out. I want to jump into one of the more skills specific lessons. Okay, so cell basics. So we'll go into lesson 5, and I'm gonna open it up here. And as you can see, it says, oh, I'm trying to keep the chat bar a little out of my way here, and it keeps taking over. Sorry, y'all. There we go. Okay, so it gives a little introduction. Whenever you work with Excel, you'll enter information or content into cells. Cells are basic building blocks of a worksheet, and you'll need to learn the basics of cells and cell content to calculate, analyze, organize data in Excel. And then it talks about pasting and saving and things of that nature. But here's the practice workbook. Then we'll go ahead and download the practice workbook. And I'll show it to you here. Okay, and you're going to teach your students to enable editing. And now they have this practice workbook to edit and to follow the lesson and the steps through the lesson that the video shows us, and then to do the challenge at the end. And as you can see here, it's a pretty well laid out, filled out, completed, almost completed spreadsheet. There's some data missing, and if you watch the video all the way through, which we're not going to do, we're just going to get a little taste of how it works. You'll learn there's some things doubled, a few people are mentioned twice, or that sort of thing. And so the lesson here will be how to add information into a new cell, how to move information from one cell to another, how to delete a cell or a row. And then you can actually make those manipulations to this spreadsheet that they've provided you with. Now, oops. Ah, how did I get away from it? There we are. Sorry. Okay, so let me show you just a moment of how this lesson works, and then how the transcript down below and the challenge or the practice at the end works that's provided for you.
Goodwill Community Foundation, creating opportunities for a better life.
Every worksheet contains thousands of cells where different columns and rows intersect. You'll need to know how to work with these cells in order to enter and edit data. Every cell has its own name based on its location, sometimes called a cell address. In this example, the cell I've selected is where column D and row 6 intersect, making the cell address D6. The address also appears in the name box above the worksheet. To select a cell, just click it. You can even use the arrow keys on your keyboard to navigate between cells instead of clicking with your mouse. To select more than one cell at a time, known as a cell range, click and drag.
Okay, and so just a few seconds of it there to give you a little idea of how the lessons work. Whoops, shrink down. There we go. And you can see just some basic things. I mean, many of us that have used Excel could probably explain the idea of how you name a cell and how you find and navigate to a cell and those sorts of things. But it's so beautifully laid out and very easy to follow along. And the way I often use this when teaching students is to pause the video as we go, and then we'll each open up our spreadsheet and maybe make some of the changes that they're making as the video does it. So I might say, all right, on everyone with your spreadsheet open, if I was projecting this on the front of a room, and then if they had computers with their own downloaded spreadsheet, let's all navigate around the page. Everybody go to D6, click on D6, okay? Everybody navigate over to F2, and now down to G3, and right? And everybody select a certain range, some of those things. Okay, let's go back to the video and see the next step of the skills. Then if you need to, and for other students later to come back, in addition to the video, as you scroll down below it, they take step by step explaining exactly what they explained in the video with screenshots as they go, okay, of what they're explaining, of cell ranges, column ranges, how to select a cell, how to highlight the content. So now you're getting an idea of where the rest of the video went. Adding content, moving content, deleting content, deleting a whole cell, copy and pasting cells. And here's where some of the things come up that are nice if as students learn a single program like Excel, they start to learn skills that are transferable to many other programs outside of the Microsoft world, because Microsoft's so dominant. Many other things now, copy and paste works the same way as it does in Word and Excel. Or if you right click on stuff, you're going to pop up new options, a little menu of options, right? Things of that nature. And so learning a specific software can be some skills can be transferred beyond that, and that's part of what they're picking up here as we practice and work with this, and not just learning every single piece of the technical of each one of these technical skills here, but how to manipulate the computer and figure out what's going on, even if they don't know what to do, how to find what to do. So you notice they did some automatic fill stuff, some drag and drop stuff, pretty extensive lesson, even though it was only, I'll have to look again, like just under 5 minutes long though, okay? Now they've got an extra little tip about sometimes, and this one's about using the fill handle. But then here comes our challenge. So the practice workbook is the one we already opened, and would probably be easier if I just open it again here. Oh, maybe not. Okay. The practice workbook here is the one we already had open, and you'll see this screenshot of it down below. And they ask us to do certain things. So this is based on the skills they taught us in the lesson. They want us to go to cell D6 and type H. Lee, which is the um, first initial and last name of one of the people in the leadership training. Then they want us to go clear the contents in row 14, delete column G, either cut and paste or drag and drop, because those are the two ways they showed us in the lesson to move things around, the contents from row 18 to row 14, and then use a fill handle to put an X in cells F9 through F17. And then here's what it should look like when you're finished. Okay. And so what I was starting to say earlier is some of you may feel like you're a seasoned Excel veteran and you could probably do this stuff easily, but this, I hope, seems like a tool to help you teach it in a way that doesn't require you to build all the steps of a lesson and is a already thought out formulated, organized way to go about it. But for anyone that doesn't feel like a super Excel whiz or any other program that you're working on, that's not necessary. I would say that a major part of what we're teaching our students is not just the specific skills and knowledge that's on the GED necessarily, but is about how to learn so they can gain and learn more knowledge on their own later. And so if you're willing to be a little vulnerable and learn right along with your students and kind of teach them how to learn while you're learning alongside them as an example, this can be a great series of lessons to work through. And that's something I've done specifically at its kind of the most extreme with an introductory to coding class that some students and I worked through together, and I had basically zero coding experience, but I needed to gain a little bit. And we did a free class through Udemy, or however you say that thing. And I said, hey, I'm learning right along with you. And they noticed, and learned what I did when we had a few roadblocks and had to get over that. And it was an excellent experience. Also did that with a few other Goodwill Community Foundation trainings here that I hopefully will get a moment to show you a little more here in a moment. But anyhow, that's a little bit about how these lessons work. And if we go back to the overall picture, you can see for Excel, like I mentioned, there's the basics, the kind of getting started pieces. Then it goes into working with cells, where we were just at lesson 5, modifying columns, rows, and cells, a little more about formatting cells, number formats, right? How you can change whether it's looking at dollars or percentages or things of that nature, working with multiple worksheets, find and replace, spelling, layout, then another section all about formulas and functions. So you can, again, things that now that I've taught it more times, I'm way more comfortable with some of these things than I was to begin with, some of the more advanced ones in particular that I didn't use every day. But this is a great lesson and a way to work through it with your students. And all of these have that same video, transcript, practice, downloadable document to work with. And you can go as far or as little through. You don't have to work through these entire lessons. Okay. But that's one major resource and a great way to get involved in teaching digital literacy, and particularly Excel that we're talking about right now is through using the Goodwill Community Foundation. There's similar lessons in Word and PowerPoint and a wealth of other things there. Okay, so generally, just to recap, we're talking about how important digital literacy is and that it's a core component of our grant guidelines, but it's difficult sometimes to mix that in with everything else you're supposed to be doing. And so we're hoping to give you some ideas about how to embed that more in your regular classroom. And one very specific way is what we're going to look at now. The idea of teaching history at the same time as some digital literacy skills. And so we're going to look at using Excel to build a timeline. And yeah, in addition to these history and a kind of digital literacy skills, you're teaching students some problem solving and some persistence and that sort of thing. Not everything in class and school is always going to be fun. Sometimes to make the cool fun a timeline at the end, you've got to take the time to put in all the information and the data that creates it, right? So let's move on with that. So I'm sure any of y'all that are teaching any US history content or social studies content have had the experience of students that don't really know when things happen. And things can be quite confused between yeah, the decades in which major events happened. I've had students, well, as I note here actually at the bottom of the slide, it's important that students know that the Civil War took place in the 1800s or the 1860s. I've had students, that have mentioned, it basically gotten the Civil War mixed up with the Civil Rights Movement. And wasn't that in the 1960s or so? It's like, oh, that was a different, I mean, there's a close resemblance in the names, but a very different time period and whatnot. Um, and so, this, if I remember back to when I was in high school, middle school and high school, really, and taking history classes, um, probably because of some of the thematic way things were taught, a lot of the historical events were kind of jumbled, and I didn't in some ways have the most clear idea of when things lined up and exactly how much time there is in between things. I mean, still, you talk to some people, and the way some history, documentaries and movies and things are made, it feels like um, the Declaration of Independence was signed and the war happened, and then the next week they wrote up the Constitution, and wham, bam, that was over within a couple of months. Instead of several years of struggle. So, while students don't need to know the exact dates of things, they need to know major timelines. And, we don't have to know, as one of my history teachers in the past, we don't have to know the exact date of every battle during the Civil War and how many soldiers died on both sides, but we need to know when the Civil War was, generally speaking, right? And so, one fun way to get at some of these things is through creating something. And as I mentioned, we're going to create timelines, historical timelines. And so learning through creating. Many of y'all are probably aware of and have learned or talked about at one point Bloom's taxonomy. And as you go up the pyramid, you're learning and more deeply, right? So remembering things like cramming for a test and trying to remember it is base level understanding, or not even understanding. I'd be careful with my words because I want to distinguish the proper levels, but it's base level knowledge, base level learning or knowledge creation, which is part of why it leaves so quickly often, right? Because you're not using and really understanding this information. You're just memorizing it for a moment. As you understand it, it starts to move more deeply. You actually use that information and apply it. It is even more, again, more deeply. You can see how we're continuing to go up. You analyze the way in which things are working or evaluate how well you're using this information or how it plays out in relation to the real world events you're looking at or something. And even more deeply, you're understanding what's happening. But then you move on to create something related to the knowledge, and you're understanding it even more deeply. And so I realize we're kind of skipping some of the steps with our students in some of this timeline stuff by jumping straight to the creating. But what I'm hoping to do and have found tends to work is in the idea of creating it, they're paying closer attention to when the events happened and they start remembering that. And then we start to understand the order of events and can start discussing how one leads into another and really applying more ideas of how history happens and social movements and cultural movements and wars and things relate to one another if you want to keep going more deeply, right? So timelines are useful tools. If you're a history student, regardless of the whole teaching digital literacy at the same time, they're a great way to understand history better and kind of, as I was just mentioning, how one event uh, relates to another, or how multiple major events might be going on at the same time. You can also see cause and effect really well. And like I mentioned, those threads in different parts of history. like politics versus science versus the arts versus, you know, military wars. When obviously I had a history teacher that was really focused on wars and battles. If I think history, I think major world events, major wars, right? So I keep bringing that up. But you know, this is a great way to visually kind of emphasize and focus on how history happens and how one thing impacts another, and how history is not just a static series of events, but a flow of things, right? So, how can we do that? You may still be thinking, okay, this is great, but I didn't see a create timelines lesson in that Goodwill Community Foundation. And it seems kind of complicated to teach my students all these little steps, and that's just up to build up a timeline. And that's true. I hear a little bit of that. And so I'm a big fan of jumping in feet first sometimes. And the truth is, because of the beauty of computing and how much it helps us do things now, you don't have to know every single piece, and your students don't have to know every single piece of what it would take to create a timeline from scratch and the multiple sheets within a workbook that might take. But and you don't have to know that because Excel offers templates, right? Just like Word has templates that'll help you get set up and started with a certain pattern or design for whatever you're doing. So the beauty is you can basically write the steps to this process in one slide, right? All you have to do is open Excel. We're actually not going to click on new, depending on the version you have. Some of them you need to click on new, and then it lets you choose more templates. Some of them right at the beginning, at the very, which is how mine will be. It's a template is the page to choose new and other templates comes up together. And we're going to go into the little search bar right underneath where those templates pop up and search for timeline. Click enter. A bunch of timelines are going to come up, and we can search through and decide which timeline template we prefer. And then we're going to choose it, click create, and then we're going to add data to the timeline. And here's where the students will start to practice, and either practice if you did a few little lessons before, like the manipulate the cells or the one right after it about formatting the cells, or learn for the first time how to change the data, add data, and you know, manipulate the cells in Excel. And basically, just like anything, if you double click any date or description or box, it'll let you then type and change the information in with a new date or description or whatnot, right? So I'd like to take a minute here to demonstrate that for you and show you just how easy that is to do. Okay. Oh, that's right. It got me. Hold on. Let's just close it. Oh well, no problem. We'll just open Excel again. Easy. Blow it up here. Okay, so good afternoon. Here, my new template options are already up here at the top. And over here to the right, I can pull up more templates if I just want a full screen of options to scroll through. But right here, I also can search the templates, right? Oh, actually, no, I do need to click more templates. This one's going to make me search my documents. Sorry. Let's click more templates over here to the right. Now I have, you can see a blank worksheet at the top and a template I used recently, and which actually is the one I want to use again, but I want to show y'all how I found that one. I just in the search bar here, put timelines, hit enter, and here's all different types of project and milestone trackers or Gantt chart trackers, all those types of things. And so there's multiple ways to visualize things. Here's a vertical timeline. Here's another horizontal timeline with some a chart with some data below. Here's a few more of those kind of Gantt chart project timelines that show overlapping events. These can be great if you're tracking multiple things happening at once. Like one line is presidents maybe, and then the next line is wars that happened while the presidents were in office, and the next line is economic events, and then you can kind of see overlapping a little bit. mean, they're designed for overlapping projects, like the plumber's going to be here for this week and the electrician will be here for that one. And then but you can use them for this sort of means as well. Now, I thought that this timeline here, milestones infographic, was particularly um, kind of exciting and pretty for our events today, and thought I would choose that one. And so when I do, it pops up and just explains a little bit about it, and I just choose create. Right? Now here, this about, as you can see, if you look here to the bottom of my screen, there's different sheets. Okay, and you click on different sheets within the workbook. The first one is all kind of about the workbook and what you can do. It kind of explains how to use this a little bit. Okay, but if you click on the chart data, you can see the name, a little description, and some of the data here. So for this timeline that I chose, we've got dates, we've got a title that can go with each of those dates, and then a short description that can go with it as well. Okay. And what that'll look like in the end is this. Here's, whoops, sorry, trying to scroll just a little bit, not a lot. But you've got the first of the benchmarks, or milestones as they call them, is to set the benchmarks for the project, and a date and a year, and then you can move along. Well, this can easily, if we go back to the chart, be turned into some major events. So what would be, if we're sticking with major historical events in US history that students get confused, what might be a few we want to add here to our chart? Anybody help me start with something in the chat bar? Add to our timeline that I should put in the data first. Okay, the Boston Tea Party. And when, what do you know when the Boston Tea Party was exactly? I mean, I can get us to the maybe year, definitely within a year or two. 1770s early, 1774 maybe, 75, 73. I don't know. Let's go. I see war, Korean War. Wars are good. Like I mentioned, that's another big one. World War I, World War II, American. All right, 73. Thank you. So I wasn't too far off. I knew it was before the revolution started. So we could stick with the big wars, and then we could put in more minor events too. That's one way to do a lesson plan. One lesson plan. You can have some students doing major events during each period. Maybe we say wars, and other students working on things that led up to the war, right? And in the case of the Revolutionary War, the Boston Tea Party might be one of those things. So say we want to go with just major wars for a minute here real quick, and I want to go in here and click. I don't want today's date. I just want 1770, whoops, not 11, 1775. Gosh, what's going on with my typing? Thank you. To, what was it, 83, right? I made note of when things ended so I wouldn't get lost here. And this was the Revolutionary. Okay, and we can also go ahead and teach students, look what happens if I spell something. Oh, nope, it's not going to do that because it's Excel. Okay, never mind. But then we could have a description here, right? U.S. gains independence from England. Or, I know that's very there wasn't really a US yet, and whatever, American colonies I should have written. You know what I mean, though. I'm kind of moving quickly here. Let's add a few more down. How about we said, what would be the next major one? How about the Civil War? That comes up. I mean, there's a couple wars before that, but in terms of our students, they probably have never heard of some of those, right? So, oops, I got my dates confused. So as a student, I got to go back and fix it. Well, I can use my arrows. Let me just go back. I meant to put the dates there, not the name, right? And then, whoops, 65, right? Not 64. And then Civil War. And then, come over here, change my description, and then we could keep going, right? Well, let's see what it looks like as we've changed things over in our infographic. Okay, so now it has the Revolutionary War, U.S. gains independence. What happened to my dates? Well, we might have to manipulate things a little bit. Error in the, oh, you know what happened to the dates? I entered them in the incorrect way, didn't I? So we'll have to go back and remind students that what it was doing. Let me show you. We'd have to change something. I bet these are. Yeah, okay. So we could learn a little bit about a formula because this is building on itself. And we'd have to teach our students to delete the formulas and put in the proper dates, which is pretty easy to do. I deleted for that one though. Why didn't it pop up? I don't know. We could play a little bit more. Unfortunately for today, I don't have time to play too much more with it, but you get a little bit of the idea. And you're right. I see we've got World War I, World War II, the Civil War and the dates, the French and Indian War. Perfect one for the one of those. Not that it was a minor issue, but one of those lesser wars that students might have forgotten or not even know about, maybe because it's not taught as often as some of these other Civil War and then 20th century wars, right? But I hope you get the idea of how this can work a little bit. Now, what we could also do is go back. Here's one lesson plan idea, and then I'm going to ask y'all while I'm showing this, think of some other lesson plan ideas you might have. If we go back to templates and choose a different timeline, oops, timelines. Maybe a student chooses this one. Create. Okay. And this will explain a little more about how those things are tied together and stuff. But what if we did a timeline here, same information, but presented it in a very different way? This one might be needed to, I thought this was a little different when I grabbed it. We might need to manipulate things a little bit than today to goal. But you get the idea a little bit how you can still move things. Maybe this is U.S. history, 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, bringing us up through the 20th century. And you had students filling in different activities that were happening or social movements or, you know, again, wars or when did different people get different rights? When did you know, women get the right to vote? I mean, I think many of our students will be surprised that it would be way over here in the third, furthest to the right, darkest blue section, right? But this can be a fun way to learn how to interact with and manipulate things in Excel and maybe make Excel a little less scary and a little more fun. It's not just for crunching numbers in a budget, while also yeah, teaching some history, some digital literacy and some history side by side. So let me go. Oops, that's not what I wanted to do. All right, let me bring this back up here. A little transition there, everybody. Thanks for waiting. All right, so I hope that seemed really easy to you, right? It just took us a few minutes to go over there, throw some things together. And of course, we didn't complete the project, but you can see how easy it was to get started. And hopefully your students will start to see it like a little game and a little puzzle instead of just filling out all the info in an Excel sheet, just learning to type and put stuff in and then something, a column, or average a column or something. They're creating a visual that shows them deeper understanding about a piece of something they need to know a little bit about for the GED. Okay, so a few different ways you could go about using this, and hopefully you've been thinking of some ideas yourself, and I'd love to hear some of those in the chat as we're going here. But we mentioned that you could assign students to research and populate the Excel with major events, and then also ask them to do, maybe try and make a distinction between major and minor events, right? And why I say that, make a distinction. One way I start some reading classes often, I often teach reading, basically active reading skills, and then roll in science and social studies material instead of teaching those as three distinct classes. And one great way to start that class is with a warm-up reading and discussion and maybe some practice questions or something pulled off of history.com's this day in history page. Changes every day, obviously. And but there's a mix of things on there between clearly major historical events and more minor events that, yeah, that's kind of historically significant, but it didn't really shift the world, right? And students need to be able to distinguish between those. It's one, it's a skill, it's a piece of evaluating information, right? And so, and then you can compare these timelines, maybe discuss the difference between the major and minor events, have some students point out that certain things were left out and maybe add those back into their events. That teaches you how to add new rows into your data without, because you don't want to have to redo it all. We want to just manipulate the Excel sheet so that it makes the picture the way we want it. You can assign students to research different centuries, like we mentioned. Maybe we have students research different centuries in their own Excel timeline sheets, and then we pull the pieces all together for that one big three piece we were looking at, and just focus on the first 3 centuries in which the U.S. Existed. Maybe we create well, like I mentioned there, yeah, the different templates or maybe different methods. There's a few other ways you could create a timeline in Excel. If you have some really advanced students who are already super tech savvy and want more of a challenge, you can have them try and create it without using a template, build their own from scratch kind of thing. You can have students collaborate and build them together. Another one for a little more tech savvy, more upper level lesson a little bit, right? Using essentially everybody online editing at the same time. You don't want all of them working on the same one, but in groups, maybe pairs or small groups, right? Let's see what we've got here. Yeah, infographic about our lives. All right, I like that. That's a good way too to connect them in with discussing something that they're excited about and learning how to create something with these tools. Another great thing can also be create a timeline using Excel to organize and visualize your data, and then maybe go into another program and make that data into an even more enticing and insightful infographic, right? There's some programs that make beautiful infographics beyond the level that Excel can do. And that can be a lot of fun. Any other thoughts or anything anybody'd like to share in the comment bar here, the chat bar, about other maybe digital literacy lessons with Excel and historical timelines or something else similar? All right, we're not big on ideas today because we're soaking it all in. I hope you're just overwhelmed with these great ideas. And excellent. We'll share as something comes to you. So really, we're pretty much at the end of things here. I just wanted to recap some of what we've talked about, and then if I've got a moment, yeah, I do think I have a moment. So, reminder, the whole point of this little lesson was students confuse historical timelines, certainly for major events. And it can be nice. I've even just tried at one level to start with getting students to know the decade in which major events happened, and then zero in on the actual dates. Like, as long as you know World War I was in the teens, the 19 teens, and World War II was basically in the 1940s, I'm feeling a whole lot better than I did a moment ago when my student didn't even know that and thought they were a whole lot closer together, or forgot there was a Great Depression in between, or that type of thing, right? So you can kind of push it deeper or less, depending on what you want to do. This interactive learning and such creates a deeper engagement, and I think, not I think, it's been proven that it creates deeper lasting memory and knowledge. The beauty about creating stuff in Excel is hopefully it gets them more excited about using these programs and more comfortable with the idea that even if I don't know how to do everything, I know how to find the help, how to use the search bar, how to use the help bar to figure out how to do it very easily. And I can manipulate a template that someone already created, even if I can't create the whole template. And that can be true of an invoice, a budget thing, a calendar, not just the timeline, right? Um, Now, briefly, and I mean briefly, I realize, I just want to jump back to the Goodwill Community Foundation page and show you the wealth of other materials here if you like this approach and want to utilize some of this. Under all topics, there are more basic computing skills, and kind of it starts with the parts of the computer and how to turn things on and such. Now, granted, you got to help get someone on the computer to do that in the first place, but then this explains it to them. Some math tutorials, some basic free typing tutorials, similar to typing.com, just a good practice site. But then other things about email, different internet, how to use different internet search engines, some stuff about online safety, some, as they call them, digital skills. This tech savvy tips and tricks is kind of fun, and using the web to get stuff done are things I've worked through with students. Back to the kind of being um, vulnerable and helping your students learn how to learn by having them watch you learn with them. I've used the beginning graphic design course for working with some students that were interested in that before, having no formal knowledge or training in graphic design whatsoever. And it was a whole lot of fun. There's some social media stuff, cloud usage. You can probably read some of the other things as I'm going by. Here's those general office things, but then there's certain specific year programs. Also, some general math and reading preparation, a little bit of GED prep, although I'm sure you'll have lots of that at your hands, um, at your fingertips. And but yeah, a lot of stuff here that can be very handy and an easy way to get into some of these topics for you and your students. Now, all the digital literacy, Word, like Excel, PowerPoint, and Microsoft, other Microsoft, Excel, PowerPoint, and Word follow the same little pattern that I showed you with the video transcript and a downloadable practice thing. That's not true for all of the lessons and all of the topics they offer. It is for many of the others, but it's true for all of those Microsoft lessons. All right. Well, are there any other thoughts or questions about what we've discussed today, or other final ideas for how you might roll this or other digital literacy learning opportunities into your classroom? All right. Another tiny little one, a good warm up. Hey, thanks. Another good warm up thing, like in addition to the idea of like warming up with the, uh, history, this day in history articles. For some of my classes, since you don't need to type a whole lot on the GED, they say you can hunt and peck and still do your essay and the short answers and things of that nature. But you do need to type a little bit to get by in the world. Like, even though I've seen some students that can type a mile a minute, I mean, they're what I call thumbers, right? And but they can't quite do that on the computer. And so you can add a short warm up, and I mean just short, like 10 to 15 minutes at the beginning of your class. Those few stragglers that are running a little bit late can make it in, and everybody has something to do. I like using typing.com. It's free. You don't even have to sign up, but if you do, it helps track the students' work. But there's other resources out there very similar to it. And I'm appreciating all the nice comments from everyone here, Jane and Megan and Paleo, um, and Lisa and Megan again. Yes, awesome. I'm glad you're enjoying it, everyone, and thought this was useful, and it looks like you'll be implementing some of these things soon. So before we finally wind things down, Pilar, great. Thank you for being here too. There is a survey, and that we'd like you to complete, and it should be on your screen now. Great. I'm glad you think this will. Yes, I hope Kay and Sandra. I'm glad you can. So getting the computer access can be difficult for Rebecca. Rebecca Lynn. Uh, yes. So can you have true? You could do something like that. You can also. One thing that can be possible if you don't have classes that have computers is if your program can buy a small number of laptops that can then be moved and lent out to groups at a time. That can be helpful. If you just have a computer or two for staff to use, you can do this same sort of thing. Oh, teach it a prison. Yeah, sorry, this is going to be tough. Um, they're getting better and better and do have more computer resources to teach in the prison system, but I understand that'll be a little more difficult. And I'm sorry I did not speak directly to those issues today. Um, right, exactly. Um, Rebecca Lynn, if you figure out some great ways to work around this, since I don't have the answer right now for us, if you'd share those with us later, that would be wonderful. We'd sure appreciate it because it's important too. I didn't. I apologize for leaving out the that specific issue of the prison sometimes. All right. Well, if there isn't anything else, please take a moment to finish out your feedback survey, and this will pretty much bring us to the end of today's session. And I'd like to remind you that next week is back to a webinar Wednesday. So that'll be Wednesday the 12th. And the webinar Wednesdays start at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. And next week's webinar will be about balancing chemical equations and some of the other lessons and questions on the GED you can answer without even being able to balance the entire equation. And the host, or the instructor rather, the trainer, is yours truly. So I hope you'll come back and learn a little bit about teaching chemical equations and some chemistry leading up to actual balancing of those equations, in addition to how to balance them pretty easily. Another mystery pulled back, kind of like teaching Excel, I hope. All right. Y'all have a great day. Thanks for being here.